there's sort of this techno babble gibberish about blockchain, innovation, tech. This is going to reinvent the metaverse. And most people just look at it and think, I don't really understand that. I'm probably too old. It's not really for me, but here's some money. Great.
But I'd also say don't write off, the underlying technology because of some silly use cases. There's some amazing stuff going on in this world.
Now, NFTs at the moment are everywhere, and they've even found their way into the sporting world, in particular, football. We're not going to spend this video telling you what NFTs exactly are, but we will be asking, do NFTs have a place in football? What are the dangers? What are the benefits of them becoming part of the game? I'm joined by The Athletic's investigations writer Joey Durso, who's written extensively about the growing role of cryptocurrency in football. Also, we're joined by the host of Crypto and NFT podcast, Welcome to the Metaverse, Luke Franks. Now, Joey, you wrote recently for The Athletic about NFTs and football, and we've seen John Terry and a number of his former teammates tweet about them recently with Jack Wilshere, Ashley Cole, Willian as well, seemingly joining Terry this week. Can you just briefly explain what is going on and why you think it might be a cause for concern for supporters?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, when I normally talk about NFTs or deal with people in this area, they're kind of anonymous accounts without their real name. So fair play to Luke for sort of showing his face. I'm interested to hear what he's got to say. But yeah, so the Bored Ape Yacht Club is a kind of original NFT series, which is really famous. These are being bought and sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've got people like Eminem, Jimmy Fallon, Reece James, the footballer, interestingly got in on that. This John Terry thing is a sort of offshoot. It's smaller sums of money. It's in the kind of thousands rather than hundreds of thousands. And these are NFTs. So these are cartoon pictures of monkeys with football trophies. It's a very odd website. I mean, it looks like it's aimed at children. It's sort of baby monkeys in the metaverse. I mean, if you look at apekidsclub.io, it's all very strange. But yeah, the idea is that people are going to buy and sell these for real money, and then they will hold. Well, with the NFT, you don't actually own the picture. You own a sort of link to the picture. And then, I mean, it seems to me like it's a speculative financial thing. People want to buy one because they want to sell it to someone else in a week's time for more money. And that's what lots of the hype around this is happening. But I'm sure Luke would disagree with that.
Luke, it's over to you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things going on really to sort of, I agree, we'll talk about the John Terry thing specifically, but I think what's happening is people are kind of tarnishing some of these sort of examples that look very cash grabby, and they're tarnishing the whole technology with that same brush of what's going on. And actually, if you spend a lot of time kind of deeply exploring the technology, what blockchain enables, and NFTs more broadly, this is a huge industry that is disrupting so many creative industries and brands across the world. And there's amazing things happening all over the world. So we won't go too far down this path, but into gaming, for example, people with NFTs, you own a digital token that you own outright, and you can also spend time in games with these and kind of earn stats and upgrade your NFTs in games, and then it's a whole play to earn movement. So people are earning from playing games all over the world. And my point really is that, if you were to look at the start of YouTube, really, and when that technology kind of started, and NFTs are much bigger than that, but at YouTube, when it first started, there were silly little cat videos on YouTube, right? And they went kind of viral. And if you'd kind of judged the whole technology by some of the first silly examples, you would have missed what YouTube became, right? And created value for so many people. And now in our day-to-day lives, we're doing this is on YouTube, right? This has value because we're using that technology for a channel that can give other people value. And, it's created stars around the world, and it's done really interesting, amazing things as the fundamental technology. So to separate those two things is quite important, really. And the John Terry thing. So yeah, Ape Kids Club is a spin-off from the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Now, the question that you'll bring up is, are celebrities who are promoting this stuff, should they be declaring that it's risky? Should they be declaring it in the same way that if they're promoting a product, they should sort of have hashtag ad on it and be clear to people what they're getting into? And yes, I would totally agree with that. I think we are so early in the technology that a lot of regulation will come and probably should be there. So I probably agree on that point.
So do you feel that it's irresponsible of footballers who have maybe taken advice rather than knowing the subject as deeply as you do, to just simply be pushing something out that they're not necessarily aware of the dangers of, especially when it deals with potentially people that are younger getting involved in something that they maybe don't necessarily have a full grasp of.
Yeah, I think, it's that age-old question of how much responsibility do celebrities have, and I think they are in a position of responsibility, and really, we all have some responsibility to get kind of educated about this stuff, but it's so early that to kind of push it onto people in a volatile market, I think is a dangerous thing, and I think regulation will come in on that, and we'll see that. There's an interesting conversation. I mean, on how much you want to restrict people, because the flip side of the argument is that if you are educated on this stuff, and say you have a good mind, and you spotted something like Uber was going to be, you thought it was going to be a really big business, which obviously it's turned into, us as kind of normal individual people could never have got in on the seed round of Uber, because it was an accredited investor round. So you need to basically have a lot of money to be able to even get in on funding those early rounds and benefiting from the upside early. So the whole kind of crypto movement is really one that is much more open and allows average normal people to get in early on things that they think are going to blow up. I mean, the Ape Kids Club is not a good example of that, but there are other things that are really fundamentally much more valuable and interesting. And there's no restrictions for us we can do what we like with our money, in the same way that we could go into a casino, and if we wanted to put all our money on red and see what happens, right? Like, how much responsibility do you want, and how much restriction do you want? Really, a lot of the education comes down to us as individuals. Do we want the kind of government to decide you're not allowed to spend your money there and do what you want with your money, or do we want to have that decision ourselves, in which case we need to get educated about this stuff? But to your point, celebrities pushing it on people who won't have done the research, and they're not also pushing education, or they're not pushing here's the risks. That's the problem. I think they're only kind of pushing the JPEG, which is quite top level misunderstood of everything else, So I think they're certainly not doing it in the right way.
Joey, is there a fear from your point of view and from the research that you've done that regulation is key in this, and that there is a little bit of a naivety to some of the things that you are seeing on social media being pushed out in the football space, for want of not wanting to use that word?
Yeah, I think there clearly needs to be more regulation. I mean, as to what Luke said about, this stuff has gone up. Some of this stuff has gone up massively in the last few years, and some ordinary people have made a lot of money out of it. And I make no secret of being pretty skeptical about all this stuff, but I try not to be sort of dismissive of that. And I think that's real. And I think I've never said to people, don't buy crypto, don't buy NFTs, but I think what is clear is you need to slap huge warning signs on this stuff that you can lose all your money straight away. And that's absolutely not happening. And, these companies aren't going to do it themselves. And there's all these companies popping up in football. There's another one which has just gone bust called Iconic, which I believe sponsored Crystal Palace and various other clubs, which minted these tokens, which are now completely useless. I think a huge problem with this stuff is there's sort of this techno-babble gibberish about blockchain, innovation, tech. This is going to reinvent the metaverse. And most people just look at it and think, I don't really understand that. I'm probably too old. It's not really for me, but, here's some money. Great. When actually it doesn't make any sense, because the whole thing doesn't make sense. Like, what's the actual product behind it? What is the actual reason why people are buying and selling these digital tokens? And I think usually, in the vast majority of cases, the reason is because people think they'll go up in value, right? Like, they think the line will go up. That's like a kind of meme on these TikTok. People just want to buy at this point on the graph and get out at that point of the graph. And if you manage to do that, brilliant. At the same point, if you got in at some speculative bubble that we talk about, the tulips, the Beanie Babies, like, of course people did make loads of real money, but what is actually underpinning any of this? Like, and I think with these monkeys, nothing. And I think, could there be real tangible uses in gaming in the metaverse? Like, maybe. I don't want to completely dismiss the prospect about it, but I'm hugely skeptical that a lot of these projects have any real tangible world, anything.
Luke, I wanted to ask you specifically about the footballing example. I wanted to bring the debate back to football. In terms of the positives of NFTs in football, obviously we know that football is based on fandom, and there is a lot of love for big stars and big heroes. What do you see as the best use of NFTs in football specifically?
Yeah, I think it's if you put the fans first, you can use NFTs again as a technology to give people utility in various ways. So, you know, if you buy a one-off ticket or you have a season ticket for your club, right, and you can go to every match, that's great, and there's value obviously in that ticket. If you do that with an NFT in a digital form, you can also attach other utility values to that, so it can give you access in other ways. So it's not just a kind of one-time exchange thing. You know, if you have it as an NFT, that might be able to open up some other options for you. So maybe a private kind of Discord chat with some important people in the club or specific players, and you can attach that utility to it. Maybe it gives you special access to buying new kits before they're released, or whatever it is. You can attach lots of interesting things that are recorded publicly and securely in a digital way that with a physical ticket it's much harder to do. So it really depends how you use the technology. If it's just a picture of an ape and that's it, and all you're getting is the aesthetic JPEG like that, yeah, fundamentally doesn't really have any use cases, doesn't have any utility or particularly any values. But there's lots of examples of people using the technology to enable value for fans, whether that is in the ownership aspect, which might be in part speculative, 100%, or whether that side you can use the digital utility in the same way that, like, you know, how many more things can you do with it's different technology, but with an email over a handwritten letter, right? Like, you know, it takes a long time to write a handwritten letter. You can't really, you could put a picture inside that letter and post it, sure, but with an email, you can attach that picture, video, image, anything. You can loop in 1,000 people at once, that you don't have to handwrite 1,000 letters to everyone. You can use that technology to enable lots more utility in a digital world and in a world that is heading digital, you know, more and more every single day. So I think it's all about how you use that and what clubs want to do with that. But yes, there is that speculative element to watch out for. And if that is the focus of the utility, that is dangerous, I would say.
I just don't understand with all the things that, you know, obviously the digital world, like, has revolutionized everything and will continue to do so. But with NFT specifically, it just strikes me as everything that you just described as a ticket, a box, prizes, all these things can just be done with far simpler digital technology. Like, can't a QR code do the same thing? Like, why does it have to be an NFT, which coincidentally is this huge speculative industry? Can't you just have a very simple digital ticket, a barcode, which allows entry to things, which we've been doing for 10, 20 years now? Why does it need to be this item which can also be bought and sold for huge sums of money on a speculative marketplace that no one really understands? Like, if you want to give someone a ticket to a box at Watford, like, what's wrong with a barcode?
Yeah, it's a good point. And in some cases, yeah, that is true. And NFTs aren't necessary for everything. But really, like, the key thing is the kind of proof of ownership that is done and you know, recorded publicly on a blockchain, so everybody can prove that ownership. So it's, you know, it means that you can, if you use your ticket for a certain amount of time and then you want to then sell it to someone else who can then buy it off you and you get some of that value back, that's an option you can do with NFTs. Royalties is a really interesting thing that NFTs enable that physical or digital tickets in the way you're describing don't. So I'll use a music example because it's simpler, but say I don't know, like Ed Sheeran, right? You saw him in a pub really early, and he released when he wasn't very big, and he released like some NFT artwork of his first ever EP, and you decided to buy that NFT. He can program in a 10% royalty on secondary sales of that NFT in perpetuity forever. So say Ed Sheeran then gets massive, well then that NFT that you owned, that original one, might become more valuable. If you want to, you've kind of funded some of Ed Sheeran's early music stuff by buying the NFT for him. If you want to then sell that on, if it becomes more valuable, then automatically the smart contract as part of the NFT will give him a 10% royalty forever on every secondary sale for that NFT forever. So that's kind of disrupting the. You can also do it. So Nas is doing it with music, where he's selling his actual royalties on the plays of the song. So if you own a rarer NFT, you can get some of the royalties of the song which is played. So rather than handing that over to a record label, you can hand that over to fans. So I'm sure there's applications in football where rather than all the funds of the merchandise and everything else going to the owners or whoever has those contracts that are often heavily in favour of whether it's the label or the owners, fans can have some of that ownership, and then if those merch sales do really well, that royalty can execute for them. So there's lots of interesting kind of digital applications that you can't do with just a standard ticket, and that is the reason that is you're able to do that is because of the underlying technology.
if I spot the next Ed Sheeran in my local pub and think he's going to be brilliant in 10 years, and I buy an NFT, I would have zero confidence that in 10 years' time, that NFT would mean anything, would be the exchange would still work, that I wouldn't have it stolen from my wallet, and I might be sitting there watching, Ed Sheeran at Wembley Stadium, thinking, like the equivalent of the guy who like his Bitcoin were buried in a landmine in Wales. Like this stuff just gets lost, it gets hacked. There's fraudsters everywhere. Like with no law, the whole thing is it's decentralized. But the good thing about things being centralized and underpinned by government is I can be quite sure that no one's just going to like fish into my bank account and like steal my money. Whereas with this, I have no confidence of it.
Well, yes and no. So, as a fundamental point, like Bitcoin, the base layer of Bitcoin has never been hacked, nor is Ethereum. Like that is, blockchain cannot be hacked. That's kind of the fundamental point of it. The hacking that you're like referring to is at different levels later. So if you have a wallet and you have Bitcoin in it and you lose your password, yeah, that Bitcoin's gone because you've lost the password. That's nothing to do with hacking the Bitcoin protocol layer. That's kind of human error at a layer later on.
The critics might say that this is just the latest fad that footballers are getting into. But do you think we are doing them an injustice by suggesting that they don't know what they're getting into, Joey?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think John Terry is like setting out to fleece his fans, or this is some kind of fraudulent exercise. I think he's doing it because he thinks it's cool, and I think lots of people think it's cool. Lots of particularly sort of young men, not exclusively, and the kind of people that footballers might aspire to. NBA players, celebrities, Eminem, Diplo, like various rappers. Like these are the kind of people that footballers want to be like, and I think that is the reason that they're into it. And obviously this is this hugely speculative financial world, which I've written lots about, but I don't think it's a sort of cynical financial game from someone like John Terry necessarily. But it's not a footballer's job to sort of regulate financial instruments, you could say. I mean, you can say that he should have a bit more personal responsibility here, but also should there be stricter rules about ads and whatever else? The Advertising Standards Authority has recently slapped down some crypto stuff, saying that it should be much more clear about the risks involved. I think that's what needs to happen here with NFTs. I've never said don't buy an NFT, but you just need to make really clear to people that it's an extremely risky financial investment and it could just go to zero or go uploads. Who knows?
Luke, your view on that?
Yeah, I think you said it well there, Joey. I'd agree with that. Like, yeah, I'm sure these footballers certainly aren't out to be purposely cash grabbing from people as a money exercise just for that purpose alone. It's probably a general, slight misunderstanding. I might be wrong. Some of them might well, have deeply done the research on this stuff. But so I think Joey's said it pretty well there. And I think it's just about the warnings being there. And I think they will come. It happened with crypto. And I think that it's probably in time, some stricter regulation will come to protect people a little bit more, but still give them the option of participating if they want to do that, understanding those risks,
Joey, it's quite clear that they are growing in popularity, and we're almost seeing, a player each day popping up with a new NFT. What would you like to see to protect fans from the risks that you've mentioned? Is there something that can be done by football in particular?
Well, yeah, I think players and clubs have a responsibility to say that they're promoting highly volatile financial assets. I mean, I don't quite know what clubs think about all this, that their employees are promoting this stuff. Because if John Terry loses 20, 30, 50,000 pounds, it'll probably be all right. But if it some random Chelsea fan might look at it and think, oh, there's a great investment, I'll pull my money out of my ISA or whatever. People need to just be aware that this stuff is risky, and that's not the case at all. And no one who's kind of into it seems particularly to want to, so it's going to have to be a push from outside.
And Luke, from your point of view, for people that have seen these monkeys pop up via John Terry effectively and are still confused by it, but there might be an opportunity there for them, what advice would you give them if they are interested, if they're engaged in it at the moment?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I would say is, hold off buying something until you have done some kind of deep education and research on what this stuff is at first. And as a general view, it's at your own risk. Yes, you can lose all your money potentially, like you can with any investment. But also, once you've done the education, if you're gonna invest, make sure you do it in long-term projects that you've done your research on. Never invest more than you can afford to lose, and have a long time frame on good projects, and know that 95% of them aren't good projects and are and our speculation. I would agree with Joey with that, and I don't think there is a big enough push around understanding this stuff. And ultimately, like you say, John Terry isn't going to care if you lose your money. So the responsibility is on you to learn and to be smart with your investments. So it starts with education, really. But I'd also say don't write off, the underlying technology because of some silly use cases. There's some amazing stuff going on in this world. So definitely do the research. And I don't know anyone who's done kind of 50 to I'm not saying you, Joe, we've had a great chat. It's been really interesting. So I don't include you in this, but anyone who's done kind of 50 to 100,000 hours of research on this stuff and still thinks it's stupid. Like, I don't know anyone who is in that position, because once they deeply understand it, they see that there are some fundamentally amazing things happening in this space with true value in a world that is trending, ever more to a digital space.
Luke, do you think that's a problem? Because you're basically telling the vast majority of people out there, that you can only understand it if you get into it, basically. Like, if you buy in, because people who own these things are trying to sell them to other people, right? They want to make money by selling to newbies, and like
not always. No, there's lots of examples. Again, it's using that kind of speculative, silly use cases, of which there are many of those. That yes, that is happening. I'm not denying that it's happening, and most people aren't doing the work and are trying to get a quick buck and get rich quick, in the same as any things in the past like that. My point is there are lots of examples of great projects that are doing really interesting things and adding utility, in a world that is going super digital, and the whole conversation around how we spend our time. If someone had said to you 10, 15 years ago that we'd be having this conversation completely virtually and we'd spend 6 hours a day on our phones, most of the conversations we have are digitally with people. I have less physical meetings now than I ever have before. That would sound completely alien. So it's just a case of coming to it with no preconceptions and doing the work. If you're going to put your money into something, like, do the work first. And you don't have to put your money in immediately. You could put a little bit in and you could experiment, see how it works, and so certainly don't put all of your savings in it with no research. Is my point. Go and learn about it, like you would do with any decision that you make that's important to you. You've got to understand it before you buy a house, or before you buy a car, or whatever it is, before you part with your money.